Measuring the bottom of the funnel is pretty easy these days. We have online advertising now. A lot of our online advertising is really, really good at getting people to convert, right? So we've all got Facebook dashboards, there's Google dashboards. I can see exactly where my marketing dollars are going, which ads are getting clicks and downloads and all that kind of stuff. It's great. The big mistake that I see people making is that they try and use these same KPIs and metrics when they're doing the top of the funnel stuff.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Ian Barnard is the strategy director at the Creative Business Company, where he helps his clients build strong brands through marketing strategy consultation. Ian also is helpfully active on social media with his digests of industry news and insights. He's worked as a digital content strategist, a marketing specialist, a communications coordinator, and he's joined us on the show today to talk about all things marketing strategy. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I think you picked me up very well. I'd like to use that for for other podcasts. That was fantastic. Thank you.
I'll send that your way. It's all true, I'm assuming, and we'll figure out if it's BS. And once again, I just want people to know Ian is amazing. Follow him on social media wherever you can. But let's start with a brief bio. I gave one in the beginning, but how did you get into marketing and what drew you to this profession?
I actually got to marketing pretty late in the game, probably compared to most people. So I went to college to study civil engineering technology, and I kind of worked in the field doing inspections on buildings and building sites for about a decade. And I realized that I hated it. I wasn't very good at it. And so I went back to school. I was studying poli-sci, and then my last year I got an internship at a small place in Toronto, and that turned into a full-time job after I graduated, and I started taking on more and more marketing roles. I taught myself the basics of coding and design and writing, copywriting, and one thing led to another, and here I am a decade later.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, well, so it's not uncommon to see that, marketers come from a diverse background, but civil engineering technology I maybe gives you a broader understanding of strategy and sort of the architecture of how marketing communications and the whole 4Ps work. But marketing strategy kind of feels like the most important thing to define in the profession, yet the definitions are all over the place, usually confused with tactics and channels. How do you define marketing strategy, and how do you see clients and marketers misrepresent this concept?
That's a big question, but it's also a good question.
I could have broken it up, but it's a turducken of a question.
Let's start. So I'll start with a very kind of basic, simplified definition. I think strategy is answering the question, how are you going to achieve a business objective, right? And really at the heart of it is the idea that we need to overcome a challenge. There's a business challenge that your company's facing. You need to find out what it is. Then you need to come up with a plan of action that's going to tell you exactly how you're going to overcome it or address the challenge.
Yep.
So really what you're saying is it's a kind of a guideline of what you will, and maybe even more importantly, what you won't do over the next 12 months or however long you're going to be setting your strategy for.
Right. Yeah.
I think one of the best books I've read on strategy is Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by a guy called Richard Remelt. And in the book, he says there's three things that a good strategy needs to have. No matter if it's marketing strategy or business strategy or even military strategy, they need to have all these three things. The first thing a good strategy needs to have is a diagnosis. Diagnosis is basically you coming in on day one and saying, what's going on here? What the hell is going on? What's going on with the business? What's going on with the department? What's going on with customers? I need to know.
Right.
So what you're trying to do here is define the challenge. What's holding the business back from reaching its goals? And, the diagnosis is usually done through research. doesn't have to be expensive or long and complicated. Research at its most fundamental is just, I'm going to talk to customers, I'm going to talk to people in the company, I'm going to like build a map, I suppose, of the territory, of all the different things that's going on, so I can get a full picture view of the different challenges that we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what you're trying to do is simplify the overwhelming complexity, because it's going to be really, really complicated. There's going to be a lot of things going on. You're going to be pulled in all these different directions. And your goal with the diagnosis is to simplify all this complexity and really identify which pieces of the puzzle are critical and which ones can you afford to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing that you need in a good strategy is a guiding policy. So once you've identified what is the challenge that we're facing, and more importantly, what's the most important challenge, what do we need to actually address to make sure that we can make money and be more profitable, then you need to answer, how are we going to approach or overcome the challenges that we've uncovered in our diagnosis. So think of it like guardrails on a highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to keep us on the path. We've got a goal now, there's a challenge, we know what you need to do, and now we're going to build a path that's going to take us from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing a good strategy needs is what Romelt calls coherent actions. And this is the tactics. This is usually where people like to jump straight into, but this should come last. So the coherent actions are going to dictate how this guiding policy will be carried out. So what are you going to do? Specifically, what are you going to do to get you from A to B in a way that's going to overcome the challenge that you've identified for the business?
Mm-hmm.
Is it making sense so far?
It's making beautiful sense. And it's interesting to note that a lot of people are approaching this in the reverse. You know, I don't think a lot of people do this diagnosis up front. I think, you know, everyone's like, the challenge is we don't make money. We need to make more money. The guiding policy is make more money. Coherent actions is do whatever we can to make more, you know, and it's weird that we don't spend what I see. A lot of marketers aren't spending time, and businesses getting that diagnosis right. I mean, would you say, like, out of the 3 steps you just outlined, what are the ones that people are missing the most?
Well, I think you're right. I think it is the diagnosis, because it's really hard to do that. Like,
Right.
realistically, look, we're all marketers. It's a stressful job, and you're being pulled in like 6 different directions at any given time, and there's never enough time to do what you need to do. So I completely understand the urge to like need to be jumping in straight away, because you need to start delivering results, right? You can't go to your boss and say like, yeah, I need like a month just to figure out what's going on. He's gonna be like, no.
Yeah, right.
You need to get working now.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but you do need to find a way to carve out the time that you need to do a proper diagnosis. And again, it doesn't have to take weeks and weeks and weeks, and it doesn't have to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. But I think, you know, if you can get three solid weeks and maybe $20,000, that should give you the time and a little bit of money to get the answers that you need from the market, from your customers, and really get a sense of like, what are the challenges that we're facing here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so that's beautiful, and $20,000 from anywhere sounds delightful. But I do assume that there's a lot of people not working with a budget that big, but possibly just what you aligned is talk to the customers. That, you know, that's basically free. Talk to the people that are facing the clients. That's essentially free. But those insights alone can really decouple the miscommunication of marketing strategy from the C-suite side to the the application, like those getting those tactics together, getting that policy, figuring out what those actions are. If somebody doesn't have a budget, would you say that the easiest thing you could do is just pick up the phone, or create a questionnaire, or what do you think? Like, I mean, the bare bones strapped marketers. Is that your advice to them?
Absolutely. I think any research is better than no research,
Yeah.
right? So picking up the phone is free. I think just about every business is going to have at least a handful of customers who'd be willing to talk to you
Right.
about what they think about your product, about the competition, about the market. What do they want to buy? What do they like about your product? What do they hate about it? That's all free. You can
Yeah.
do that in a couple days. The internet, you can find a lot of information on the internet. I bet if you spent a solid day on Google, you'd be surprised at what you
Yeah.
could come up with.
Right.
There's a lot of free reports out there on different industries, different categories, different trends,
Hmm.
and a lot of segmentation work that we do with our clients is a lot of the information is freely available online, so you don't always need custom expensive first party research to do a good diagnosis.
Let's get into more of that measurability. A lot of marketers are eager to prove the value of what they're doing or the importance of it. And there's tons of ways to measure performance online specifically. How do you approach the measurement and getting towards the effectiveness of a marketing strategy?
When we think about it in two different ways, I think there's two different types of measurements that you need depending on what kind of marketing that you're doing. So if we split marketing into two levels, there's top of funnel marketing, which is all about brand awareness. We're trying to get on people's radar, make them familiar with who the company is, what they do, why they should care. And then we've got bottom of the funnel tactics, which is more about getting the sale, right? We're going to push people further down the funnel to get them to consider buying the product, checking out the website, maybe going to a store, and then purchasing.
Right.
Measuring the bottom of the funnel is pretty easy these days. We have online advertising now. A lot of our online advertising is really, really good at getting people to convert, right? So we've all got Facebook dashboards, there's Google dashboards. I can see exactly where my marketing dollars are going, which ads are getting clicks and downloads and all that kind of stuff. It's great. The big mistake that I see people making is that they try and use these same KPIs and metrics when they're doing the top of the funnel stuff. So all the stuff that comes before someone's ready to buy. They might be ready to buy in the future, but not right now, or they may not even know that your company exists. So how can we get on their radar and make them think of you when they are ready to buy? That's top of funnel. That's usually what we mean by brand building or brand marketing.
Right.
And you need a different approach, and you need a different set of KPIs when you're dealing with this. Performance metrics are not going to work because people aren't ready to buy. They're not going to watch your video, go to your website, download your thing. So what can we use instead? I think it's helpful to think about what is the goal here with top of funnel or brand building marketing. The goal really is that we're going after awareness. We want more people to know that we exist. We need to make them more familiar with who we are and what we do. Just knowing that you exist isn't enough. Like, okay, NinjaCat, who are those guys? What do they do? What are
Right.
they selling?
Yep.
Why are they the best? And then there's salience. You need to come to mind when someone's ready to buy, right? So
Hmm.
if someone's thinking like, need some new software for measuring my marketing, you need to think of NinjaCat. You need to go
Right.
to those guys.
Yeah.
So if we have these three goals in mind, what are some KPIs that we can use to measure that? Well, for awareness, I like to use percent audience reach. So as part of your strategy, you should know approximately how big your market is. What's your TAM, your total addressable market?
Right.
And the goal is that, well, if we know how many people are potential customers, we need to reach as many of those potential customers as we possibly can with our advertising. So
Hmm.
percent audience reach, you take the impressions of your ad campaigns, divide that by total people in your market, boom, percent audience reached.
Hmm.
You can use ad recall to measure the effectiveness and salience, perhaps, of your ads. So how many people remember your ad a couple days after seeing it? Facebook, I know, provides this within their platform as a measurement. It's already.
Mm.
That can tell you how effective are your campaigns, how
Right.
effective is the messaging, is it memorable, is it getting noticed, is it standing out? And the last metric I like to use is what I call resonance. And you can measure this like daily, weekly, monthly. But resonance is the combination of frequency and reach. So how many people am I reaching with my campaigns and advertisements, and how often am I reaching them in that specified period?
Mm.
And as a general rule of thumb, the gold standard here is you're trying to reach 80% of your total addressable market between 3 and 5 times per campaign. Again, this will vary by your company, your category, and so on. But there's a lot of marketing research that shows that beyond 5 impressions or 5 opportunities to see, the effectiveness kind of like dives off. So there's not much difference showing someone an ad 5 times versus 10 times, but there's a big difference between showing someone an ad maybe twice compared to 3 or 4.
You bring up something really key, which is the TAM, the total addressable market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one that's just kind of like I keep hitting my head up against it because, as I was saying earlier, the goal is just make money. The goal is just to have everybody see it, and how can you get to TAM? How do you know? Is there a way that are there tools that people can get to like really finding and drilling down the pond in which they're trying to fish? Because people have this burn the ocean, we're going to fish wherever the fish are, kind of approach. But it's a giant sea of consumers that are in a fractured media landscape. They're over here on YouTube, they're on Twitch or wherever. How can you, what's your advice on getting to TAM? Because I think that helps people say, here's how many wins you have. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's start talking about the game we're playing. I don't think, from my experience, a lot of people have a firm grip on the TAM. Help us with the TAM, Ian.
The TAM. Okay.
The TAM.
The TAM is, so first off, it's going to be different for everybody. There's no kind of general TAM. Every business is going to have its unique its unique TAM. How you find it, that's really what you're looking for in as part of the diagnosis, right? So 9 times
Mm-hmm.
out of 10, you can get a pretty good handle on TAM just by doing Google research. So
Huh.
if we take any product, like I don't know, let's just say shoes. Okay. Let's
Yeah,
say
people have feet. Everybody has 2 feet.
they do. They do.
Uh, okay, I'm not good at math, but I'm starting there. Okay, keep going.
You need to ask yourself, will someone potentially buy my product in the next 12 months? Yes or no? With shoes, you would think that, okay, that's a pretty big TAM. Everyone wears shoes. Could it be the entire population? Maybe, but I would, whatever it is that you're selling, just try and think about it a bit more and say, like, well, is there something unique about our product that, would really turn some people on and make them more
Mm,
likely to buy? Or
mm,
vice versa, is there something that people just aren't going to consider? So for example, if you're selling women's high luxury fashion shoes, for example, your TAM is obviously not going to include any men, so you've just kind of cut the
mm-hmm.
population in half. And
Right.
there is, part of the diagnosis would be, I need to find out how many women approximately you're interested in in very fashionable luxury shoes. It won't be all
Right.
women, but let's say, 10% of the total population says that they, buy or would be interested in buying a pair of luxury shoes in the next 12 months. Boom, that's your TAM.
Well, then that sounds so easy. So really, TAM is this sort of out there metric that is informed by getting that diagnosis right, doing some more customer insights, taking a look in your CRM and saying, it seems like this kind of demographic is the decision makers, when we come to, making that sale. Then you can kind of cross-reference that with statistics, that you could find on Google or, LinkedIn or something like that. But So it's interesting to note that if you really want to know where your future clients are coming from, you really need to be familiar with where your current clients are. Is that sort of, am I connecting dots?
Yes, yes. I think you're connecting all the right dots. And I think you said something very important as well, which is that as part of the diagnosis and fleshing out your TAM, you want to be looking at people's buying behavior. So what we're
Mm.
talking about here now is we're getting to segmentation, right? So I've got all these buyers that are out there. They're all potential buyers. I need to break it down because most businesses can't go after the total market. There's just too many people. We don't have the advertising
Right,
dollars to do it. So
right.
you look at the TAM and then you just try to start breaking them down into smaller segments based on how they shop for whatever you're selling. The big
Mm-hmm.
mistake here is that people use general segmentation variables. What do I mean by that?
Mm. Mm.
Often when you segment markets or you see segmentations done, they're broken down, excuse me, by things like age, whether they're boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials.
Right.
That's totally the wrong way to do it. What you need to be
Mm.
doing is identifying how do people shop for whatever I'm selling, and are there big differences within my TAM with how people behave when they're buying my products. So if we continue with
Mm-hmm.
the footwear example, our total TAM, let's just say, is like all women in Canada. We're selling women's shoes. We can look at all women in Canada.
Yeah.
Within all these women in Canada, they're not all going to shop or think about shoes in the same way. Some people are not
Mm.
really going to care too much about shoes. They don't think about it too much. It's just something I wear, whatever. I just want a
Right.
good deal. Other people are going to be high fashionistas. They love it. They're
Mm.
following the latest fashion trends. They like to shop at the department stores and luxury brands. They put a lot more time and effort into their clothing and their outfits. So two
Mm-hmm.
very different segments of the same TAM, which
Mm.
you may or may not want to go after, depending on where your brand is positioned in the market.
Right. And then there, I mean, your segmentation is really key. Demographics versus psychographics, figuring out more about buyer behaviors. But you just said something really interesting is how do people get insights in where they stack rank against competitors? Because a lot of people may think my direct competitor, whoever's next on the search engine results page, that's who it is. But that might not be the case. Do you come across that uh, problem when you're consulting folks, or do you see like people getting their competition set wrong, or is that, what do you think there?
Yeah, that's really interesting because every business that I've worked at or worked with, they're always internally, they're always dead certain about who their competition is, right?
Mm.
Um, and what I've found every time is that they're never completely wrong, but they're also never completely right either. As soon as you
Yeah.
start talking to customers, again, going back to the diagnosis, we're going to find out what's really going on in people's heads. And every time I've done it, we've always uncovered competitors or alternatives that people are using that the business or the client really hadn't considered at all.
It's so funny because, if go off on a hypothetical, I sell luxury lemonade or something, and then you'd think my competitors are other lemonade dealers. This metaphor is kind of, it's souring on me, but your actual competitor could be water or Gatorade, or soda or something like that. And I think, how do you get people to expand into those alternatives that folks are using to find something that is a competing product or service?
Hmm. Not under sure. I'm not under sure I understand the question. Sorry, man.
Well, I'm just thinking like it's so obvious. Then how do you figure out those alternatives? Is this once again going back to diagnosis? You know, um, Maybe asking a couple leading questions like, if you didn't choose this product, would you have chosen that product? Or, I mean, is like how much is that a part of the diagnosis? And just kind of helping people build out their reality of what their actual competitor set is.
I understand. Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to the diagnosis, man. It's
Right.
all about talking to customers and figuring out um, how they shop. And you'll get the answers all the time, and 9 times out of 10, there'll be some surprises in there that you just hadn't considered.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that you can know is just by asking people. I think the approach that I like to take is that as a marketer, when you're working with a client, or even if you work in-house and you've been at the company a long time, the philosophy that you should have, or the approach that you should take, is that I know nothing. I'm in a dark room with no windows and no lights, and it's kind of weird and scary. And it will feel kind of weird and scary, right? Because everyone, your instinct is to kind of jump and start working and find the solution as soon as possible. And you can't do that if you're stuck in the dark. And the only
Yeah.
way to turn the lights on is to start talking to people and finding out and doing research.
Well, it's just one of those things that I just know that most people are not doing that research because they come in with the sure bets, the instincts. I mean, I'm speaking personally. I started late in the marketing game as well, and I came on board. I was doing personal injury law firm marketing, and I was like, why are they wasting all this money on TV and radio? Like that's silly. You could give me like half of that budget and we can, rock it in the search engines and let's do more social stuff. And then I started to really look at the, questionnaires that I was getting back. How'd you find out about the brand? What made you choose that? And it really just created a schism in my head because I was like, no one watches TV anymore. But I was thinking of myself,
Mhm.
and I was like, everybody's on social media. No, you're on social media all the time, Jake. And I think it was interesting because I wanted to come from a place of surety
Mhm.
and it made me sound stupid. And luckily, my boss at the time let me kind of gave me some rope, and was like, "How? Oh yeah, the radio isn't working." But after months of research, I was just realizing, oh my gosh, radio alone was responsible for a huge amount of, intakes and, clients signed on to the firm. And it really just, it sent my head reeling. And, I think most people don't feel comfortable with not knowing. And they want to feel like they have something that they're bringing to the table, but you really have to be um, comfortable with not knowing. And I think that's an amazing point. It's a humble point, right? I mean, getting people to disabuse themselves of you know, their sure bets, their sure thoughts. Do you have to shoehorn it out of their hands, or, is it you let the data do the talking? How do you help people kind of question themselves and get back to not knowing?
Well, I think you're right. I think for me, I try to let the data do the talking. It's very hard to argue with, customers telling you what they think
Yeah.
and what they feel and what they want, right?
Right.
So I think that the benefit of doing a diagnosis and having that kind of work in your back pocket is that it's kind of a conversation killer when someone comes in and starts questioning your decisions, the approach that you're taking. You can say, well, hey, look, like, this is not my opinion. I'm basing it all on the research and what our customers and what the market is telling us. So I think it's really effective. But you're right. It's very difficult. And hey, look, like, we've all been there. I think one of the best
Hmm.
pieces of advice that I ever got in terms of marketing was someone told me, you are not the customer.
Mm.
We're all going to
Preach.
have our opinions and feelings about whatever product we're selling, the brand, the company, what people like, what people don't like, and that's fine. Like, as an individual, you can have all those opinions, but you are not the customer unless you are going to go out and buy $10 million worth of product. Your opinion doesn't matter. right? Your
Well,
job as a
but it's
marketer is not to know these things instinctively. Your job as a marketer is to realize that you don't know anything, but to go find out the real answer.
it's amazing to think that that simple piece of advice, you are not the customer, is so hard to get to. Particularly if maybe the marketing team has put out an ad or something. I just sort of an anecdotal thing. I was talking to a friend, and they worked at a well-known company, and they were running ads with a spokesperson. And it was doing good. I would assume the recall was high because I understood the same ad this person was talking about, but the CEO was new to the position, and they said, I hate these ads. Like, I see them everywhere. I'm sick of them. We're going to change. And like, have you ever experienced that, where like, it's like, well, hold on, like if you're thinking about, resonance and frequency, people seeing the same ad over and over is a good thing. They're becoming familiar with you. But the people who work in marketing or are observing the marketing activities get sick of an ad. They want to scrap it. What do you say to these people?
Don't do it. uh, you're not
That's
the
it.
customer. Yeah, I know. I mean, there was a great story. It's a professor called Mark Ritson,
Yes.
who shares a lot of kind of marketing knowledge online. And one of the best stories that he had was that he was working with Veuve Clicquot, the
Mm.
champagne
Wow. Yeah.
company in
Yeah.
France, I believe.
Right.
And they wanted to kill. So Veuve Clicquot is very famous champagne, very expensive champagne, and it
Yes.
has this very distinctive kind of deep yellow label on it,
Right.
right? And it stands out
Right.
in a
Yeah.
mile. Like you can see that if you're in the liquor store, you can like spot it a mile off. It really stands
Yep.
out. And
Yeah.
the entire Clicquot team hated it, right? They wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to scrap it. They're like, we're sick of it. We've been working here for like a decade. We see yellow every day. Our office is yellow. Our merch is yellow. The bikes that we ride to work are yellow. I'm sick of it.
Right.
Time for something
Right.
else.
Right.
And Professor Ritson was like, "You guys are crazy. You cannot get rid of it. It is your most distinctive asset. Just because you're sick of it doesn't mean that everyone else is. Most people think about Veuve Clicquot maybe like once or twice a year when you're out, in a restaurant or in a bar and you want to celebrate. You look for the bottle of Veuve Clicquot. So yeah, it's a hard lesson, and it hits everybody, right? Like no one's immune to it.
No.
But I think you really have to keep reminding yourself and others that your opinion doesn't really matter. it's it's
Oh
it's
man,
the opinion of the market that matters.
that's exactly right. And how many times, at Coca-Cola, someone was like, I hate this bottle. And you're
Mm.
like, get out of here.
Yep.
I mean, it's funny to see Veuve Clicquot from 1772. I mean, hundreds of years of salience and association. And, you catch some marketing team on a bad Tuesday, and they're like, we're canceling it, everything. We're rebranding the champagne. And it's like, oh, I'm glad that Mark Ritson was there too, because I'm pretty sure he threw some choice curse words in his estimation too, just to make sure that people understood the salience of those brand assets and, getting to that point. That's a fantastic story. Pop some champagne for that one. Let's go into story mode. Actually, that's a good pivot. Do you have any Cinderella stories about clients you worked with who really understood strategy and they experienced a fairy tale ending? And then conversely, do you have any horror stories about marketing strategy?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't want to get into the horror stories just because I don't want to bash I don't want to bash anybody.
Fair,
People
fair.
come to us because they recognize they need help, and
Right,
I think that's a good thing and a fair thing. In terms
right.
of positive stories though,
Yeah.
around marketing strategy and brand measurement. Um, there was a client or a company that I worked with for quite a while, and they were very reluctant to do, what we'll call a proper diagnosis. So there was lots of
Hmm.
strategy going on, but there was no real research into the customer, into behaviors, the shopping habits of what they were selling, and the market in general. And it was
Right.
because it was for a good reason. It's because they've been burned by bad research in the past. I see this a lot with companies and
Ah,
clients. They'll commission a big research project with really good intentions, and they often
right.
are disappointed with the results, right? They feel like, well, this
Hmm.
is not it's not really helpful. What am I supposed to do with this? So get like a really thick
Yeah.
report with 100 pages and really not much actionable content within it. So they've been
Right.
burned and they were reluctant to do more. And it was a real challenge to convince these
Mm.
guys that they needed to go back and do a diagnosis. They were facing some challenges in
Right.
the business. We're trying to get things to grow and scale. And it
Hmm.
wasn't quite happening. And I kept saying for, over a period of a year or two, like, look, we need to do a diagnosis, guys.
Right.
Finally, they agreed to do it, and it went so well. So like the insights that we got, it gave us a better understanding of the different types of customers who are in the market. It really
Right.
clarified what people thought about the company, both
Mm.
good and both bad.
Hmm.
um, and it gave us the direction that we needed to overcome the challenges that we were facing. So we were able to
Hmm.
identify like what is the challenge here? Why aren't we growing in the way that we think we should be?
Right.
And once we had the customer profiles and the segmentation, it kind of opened up a very clear path to say like, well, here's what we need to do, guys. Like, we think the problem is this, but it's not actually that. The problem is something totally different. And hey, congrats, we can easily fix this.
Mm.
um, and it was so successful. They've insisted on doing that every single year since then. They've been doing it for
Wow.
I think 3 or 4 years now. The same kind of brand tracking survey every
Fantastic.
year to track the
Wow.
results and measure their progress. So going
Yeah.
from not really valuing research and diagnosis and as a foundation of strategy to kind of insisting that it be done on a yearly basis because it's so helpful. I think it's a Cinderella story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Leave the shoe. Let's just get into this pumpkin and just roll. No, but you bring up an interesting point is say you do have this strategy together. How often are you questioning it? I think you got to let things ride. You got to let the strategy sort of play out, do the proper steps, get the guiding policy, do the diagnosis, come up with those action steps. But then how often are you questioning a strategy? And what type of insights would help you? Do you think it's better to just give it 6 months, give it a year, and then take a look at it like this company that you were talking about? Or is there a chance to do that every day? I mean, every hour, these metrics can go up and down, and just kind of how do you think and help people position how they should let things roll and then when they should question how things are rolling?
Well, I think you do the big check-in once a year. So I think when
Hmm.
you're coming up with your strategy and your brand plan for the next 12 months, you're going to set your goals and say, here's where you want to be 12 months from now.
Hmm.
Um, but there are ways that you can check in throughout the year to make sure that you're on track. So
Mm.
ideally, you're going to come up with kind of smaller goals that will ladder up to whatever your big goal is. And I think
Right.
about once every quarter is a good time to check in with the team and see what's going on to make sure that you're on track. So it gives you enough time for your initiatives to kind of take effect. It takes at least a couple months for any kind of campaign to really build and have an
Right.
impact. But at the same time, kind of to your point, you don't want to get to like 9 months down the road and realize, guys, we're nowhere near where we need to be here. What happened? So I think quarterly checkups are great that you can do
Yeah.
internally as a marketing team. And then once a year, ideally you do some kind of big review That would
Yeah.
ideally include some kind of brand tracking survey that pulls data from the
Mhm.
market and customers to make sure that you're delivering on what you meant to throughout the year.
And so we got two more questions, and then we'll end it. But I wanted to ask you, strategy wise, B2C and B2B. Maybe you're working in fast moving consumer goods, and that strategy works if you're selling soap, or something like that. But those strategies don't work over here in business to business, where people are really making informed decisions and thinking. And the way in which I'm saying it maybe belies where I'm headed with this. But do you see that there are distinct differences in B2C and B2B? And what do you see some similarities are as far as strategy is concerned?
I think the only difference between B2B and B2C when it comes to marketing strategy is tactics. So the
Mm,
idea, if we go back to Remmelt's, vision of what a good strategy is,
right,
diagnosis, you need the challenge, and then you need the coherent actions.
right,
Diagnosis and the challenge, the same thing, right? It's going to be unique to every business. I don't care what you're selling or what you're doing. You're going to figure out who are your buyers, what's going on in the market, and what's the main challenge that we're facing as a business. So that's universal. Where the difference can come in is with B2B, you usually need different tactics. So
mm-hmm,
if you're in a very niche, if you're selling very kind of niche services, you're not, you usually end up relying more on the sales team of the company as a tactic in itself. The sales team are usually the ones who are going out there, they're getting the leads for the business, and then they're converting them. So
right,
usually as a marketer, if you're working with a B2B company, you're a lot more involved with the sales team as a marketing tactic to help you achieve your goals. B2C
right.
obviously don't have that. It's pure advertising, comms, PR, product place, price, all the four P's, good stuff.
All that, yeah. No, I that's fantastic. And very insightful. You've given us a lot to think about, ways that we can get to understanding our customers better, understanding how we're reaching out to them, how far we have to reach out, what kind of gas we need to put in our cars. Uh, but if you had to consolidate all of this, what is your one piece of advice when it comes to marketing strategy?
One piece of advice.
Like a bumper sticker, or just
I
kind of something that you could just say, that's it.
I'll have to repeat. It was the best piece of advice that I ever got. You are not the customer. As long as you start from that place, it's very hard to go wrong because it's going to force
Wow.
you to go out and interact with people outside the company, find answers and bring them back into the company, and then use those answers to figure out what to do. So as long as you're following that, I'd say it's hard to go wrong. If you're a casual listener, or someone who's just interested in marketing, I really recommend that you do read Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. It's a fun book.
Yeah.
It's not overly technical. It's well written. If you are a professional, if you're a marketing strategist or you like to become a marketing strategist, I really recommend getting some training. And you
Mm,
don't have to go to a business school or anything. There's really good online training programs now.
mm,
Marketing Week has a mini MBA on marketing
mm.
strategy. Chartered Institute of Marketing, SIM, has one in the UK. If you're in the
Mhm,
States, Scott Galloway and Section 4
mm.
has online brand strategy training. I'm
Love it.
I'm all for being self-taught. I'm largely self-taught myself, but I feel like strategy is such a big topic, and I haven't really been able to find a really good comprehensive free resource. I don't think you can learn that from YouTube or just by reading a couple books. I think you need proper training if you really want to take it seriously and dive deep. So I would say, yeah, read books, get training. Remember that you're not the customer. and all will be well.
Perfect. I love it. So, and as I said at the beginning, you're always dropping really insightful questions and insights, and you present this stuff so well and help make the marketing audience better. If people want to connect with you and learn more about you online, how can they do that, Ian?
You can find me on Twitter. My name is Mixes in the Attic. And if you like longer form content reports, check out our agency website, creativebusinesscompany.com. We have a lot of free guides, blog posts, articles that'll help you become a better marketer.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Ogilvy or Burnback?
Ooh. Ogilvy.
Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the box thinking or executing the plan?
Executing the plan, because it's so much harder to do.
Yeah, right. We can always think outside of the box. Who can really stick to the plan? Great point. This is hard. I don't know. I can't believe I put this in here. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, definitely Star Trek. I hate Star Wars.
There's a lot of unrest. It seems like Star Trek has it a little bit more buttoned up. Here's a good one. Regret or doubt?
Ooh. Regret, I suppose. Better to regret something because you can learn from it. If you doubt something, then you never really know that if it was a valid feeling or not.
Great point. And finally, travel forward in time or backward?
I'd have to go backwards just because there's too many cool things that I would like to see, and the future might be terrifying. So, the past seems safer.
There's a little bit more syphilis and dysentery and plague, but I'll take my chances.
Exactly.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.